Welcome back to another episode of Merge Extra. Today we're sitting down with someone who we sat with, I think just over a month ago, but it's on a completely different topic. So we first met Stephanie Ihsan on the show as a revert to Islam. Today we're going to be discussing a number of different topics, from mindful parenting to raising kids in the 21st century in a global society, emotional intelligence of children. And she's here to discuss that with us today as a kindergarten teacher who is a teacher in a private international school in Muscat. She also has a background in mindful education and children's nutrition. Welcome, Stephanie Ihsan, to the show.
Good to be back.
It's good to have you back. So how have you been doing since our last sit down?
Alhamdulillah, it's been a fast month. Yeah.
The month of Ramadan.
Yeah.
I think it flew by for everyone. Okay. We had discussed on the show, and then the majority of our conversation on this topic was actually after we shut the cameras down. Mm-hmm. We talked about mindful parenting. We talked about raising kids to be curious and independent and allowing them that independence. You mentioned that you would like to raise awareness on this topic. Why is this topic important to you? Or why is it an important topic to begin with?
Well, I've been an educator here in Oman for, actually I need to count, more than 15 years. And so the majority of my career has been working with Omanis, and Oman is a place very dear to my heart that's given me a lot. And part of continuing to give back to the community is working with their most precious asset. And over the years, it's the love that I have for children has just grown because they teach me so much as anything I could ever teach them. And so in that, it makes me an advocate for them, an advocate for what I want their future to be as Omanis, as Muslims, and what I think they deserve as children to have as a good childhood, you know.
What kind of things do the kids teach you?
Well, I think we had talked about it even last time
about camera.
Yeah, I love their purity and their sincerity. The brutal honesty of children, and also, you know, from an Islamic standpoint, the fitra, you know, that pure state of what humans are supposed to be and what we as adults actually want to strive to get back to. Oftentimes, in raising children, we're so motivated to get them to be like us. Sometimes we miss the cues of how they're actually showing us how to be better. And if we could have a more compatible working together relationship, I think that we would bring out the best in children, and they're also bringing out the best in us.
Can you talk to me about mindful parenting? What is it? Why is it important?
Taking first the term mindful, I want to address that because sometimes people are put off or have misconceptions of what that means. And mindfulness is living in the moment, you know, and accepting ourselves first, loving ourselves, who we really are, and all of those imperfections, and being at peace with that, accepting that, so that then when we're interacting with our children, that we can be mindful, be aware and attuned to what they're going through and how we're building a relationship with them. One deterrent that I see people often have with mindfulness is that they think, I'm never good enough, or I dislike this about myself, or, you know, they have all these inner struggles and inner voices. No, adults.
Okay, adults.
They have these little things that hold them back, you know, maybe confidence or self-esteem or the stress of work. And so when they go towards mindfulness, they think, oh, I'm doing it wrong. I would be a horrible teacher to, try and share this moment with others when I can't do it myself. And so just taking a moment to accept who we are as adults, all the struggles that we're going through, actually gives us a time to interact with our children in a more authentic way.
Okay, so I found it very interesting that, I expected your answer to be more geared towards what can we do in a practical way to be more mindful towards our kids. But you took it to, you first have to fix what's in yourself and be mindful with yourself, practice self-love, and then you can give that to your children.
Yeah.
Okay, that was an interesting perspective.
I first started studying about mindfulness because I wanted to improve my salah. And, the focus is sometimes not there. I wanted to have this, what is khushu'?
Khushu',
right? Yeah. And so I started looking at ways in which I could improve myself in that way. And it opened up this whole world of just looking at everything. Practicing gratitude, for example, or being in a moment where you can really use all of your senses to just appreciate where you are at that time. And when you do that and you practice it over a period of time, you become more relaxed. You become more appreciative of everything that Allah has blessed you with. And also, as we're parents, I have a lot of sympathy for what parents are going through. It's a lot of stress. And so I thought, well, as parents, we, and I include myself, I need to have this so that I can be a better family member. And of course, then it carries over to being a teacher as well.
Okay. The first thing that came to my mind is, okay, you can work on yourself as a parent, as a person, but then stress still comes into play sometimes. Some days you'll come from work and you're exhausted. As a parent, whether there are issues the parent might be going through, how can they still show up as mindful parents to their children despite whatever they're facing in their day?
I think two basic focuses that we need to have is sincerity and consistency. Children are wonderfully forgiving and understanding, and we're modeling everything to our children. So we don't want to model to them that this is a perfect world and nothing bad ever happens. We want to model to them sometimes there's difficulties. This is how to handle it.
Okay.
And it doesn't mean being perfect all the time. It means about having a continual open communication with your child about your emotions and saying, honestly, I'm having a bad day. Could I have some space for a minute? When I calm down, I'll be able to talk to you or play with you. Showing them you don't have to have a facade, a fake face, but that you respect them as people and you want to share with them.
Okay. And if you do make a mistake, you be open and apologize about it, is what you're saying?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. You said children are very forgiving. I do agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
But then I have been seeing many posts on social media where people are like, oh, my parents traumatized me. And some of them are understandable. So some of them, it's big things, or a parent maybe didn't show up as they should have.
Mm-hmm.
But then others had very good parents and they were complaining about, for example, 1 or 2 instances that apparently traumatized them all the way into adulthood.
Mm-hmm.
Are they really that forgiving? Because I don't know, I feel a lot of parents are afraid anything they do could traumatize the child potentially.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you deal with that fear as a parent?
I think...
Is it a valid fear?
Yeah, well, I hope so, because I lost many sleepless nights are attributed to that fear.
Okay.
I think, first of all, if you're worrying about doing the best you can for your child and working at it, like sincerely with a priority in your life, then you're not going to hurt your kids.
Okay. So as long as you have the
already,
right intention.
You're already putting your priority to helping your child. I think it'll be we have to unpack your question there because there's several different elements to it. So first of all, you can't just say, oh, I really want my child to be happy and have a good life. I want to be a good parent. You need to put in the effort. Sometimes it's self-sacrifice. It means that you don't take what everybody else tells you to do or what your parents have done. You need to study and get the knowledge, get the skills to be a good parent. I think it's unfortunately they don't teach good parenting unless you go for college in child psychology or something like that. A lot of these things are not taught to parents. And we need to know this. We need to know how children are growing and developing.
I always hear the statement here in Oman. I'm sorry to
no,
interrupt, but I
absolutely.
always hear the statement, just have a kid and everything will come. And you'll know what to do once you have the kid. I'm the kind who kind of overthinks and I know, but then how can I raise them? For me, one of my priorities is to raise them in an Islamic way.
Mm-hmm.
One of my priorities is to raise them, make them feel understood. For example, make sure their emotions are heard, which is why I connected to your topic when you brought it to me last time. But then they go like, you'll just know what to do. It's fine. Do you believe in that?
I don't think that is a very responsible way to go about anything.
Okay.
In our lives. As adults, we don't go at driving a car or attending college in that attitude.
So why should we raise our kids with this attitude?
This is another human life.
Okay.
And it deserves to put in the effort. And I think if we are honest with ourselves and we sit and we just take a moral assessment of ourselves, we can see what we need to improve on, what we have some questions about. Then we should go and find those answers. I definitely don't think that it's something that should be taken lightly, having children. Allah blesses us with the responsibility of hosting another human life in this earth. And this is something that is unimaginable responsibility, blessing. And there comes a time when we have to answer to Allah, how did we do with the responsibility that He gave to us? It's, what is the word in Arabic? Amana? Trust?
Amana. Yeah. Okay. So you look at kids as an amana, which is why we should work on ourselves to make sure we can do the best job possible for them.
Yes.
Okay. That's a fair perspective. Now, let's say we did work on ourselves. We did make sure we became more mindful people so that we can become more mindful parents. We still have the issue of outside influences. So, I mean, I think this was always present. It could be the neighbors, it could be their friends at school. It could be, for example, other family members, extended family members. Now I think we have it even more with social media. One of the topics that I think we discussed before was how would we raise our kids, even if we have all the techniques, even if we're trying to be as mindful as possible, even if we try to instill the best teachings to them. How do you raise them with social media? The influences are, I mean, you literally everything is out there.
Yeah.
But how do you raise a kid in a global society?
It's, well, and looking at the general understanding of what people think global society seems to always be filtered down to social media. If you notice, that's kind of a trend. Like everybody talks about global society, and then suddenly
that's true. That is very
social
true.
media makes it in there, and that's really sad. It's not about diversity, about understanding different cultures, or traveling, or extending your education. It's about social media. That's how we have,
Boiled it down to-
advanced.
Uh-huh.
That's it. So it's kind of, again, it's a multifaceted question. Like looking at social media and the way that there's a lot of research right now being done in several countries as to the effects that social media has on small children. And each age level faces its own kind of complications and its own unique set of challenges for how a child should develop normally and healthfully in comparison to how social media can possibly taint and mistreat that growth time. So, as I said before, research is varying right now. And I think when we go back to talking about parents looking and researching for themselves as to how to be better parents, that's definitely something that needs a lot of time.
Okay. How is you mentioned, there are studies regarding how social media is affecting children.
Mm-hmm.
How is it affecting them based on what you have read?
So the statistics are very vast. It would require our entire our entire episode just to go over them. But basically, with the start of 2010, where people marked a high rise in the number of smartphones that are being accessed by children, and that is age 12 to 16. We're still considering minors. There was also an increase in self-harm, with self-doubt and body image, more exposure to violence and what we call cyberbullying, online bullying. And for each of those topics, there's a set of harms, damage that is done to the child, and of course, the repercussions that are done to the society.
Okay. I think the article you had sent me this morning included suicide as well as one of the consequences of an increased use of social media by kids.
Yeah.
Okay.
From a traditional standpoint of child development, one of my favorite psychologists, Erik Erikson, has a 8-part development theory for children. For my young children, early years, which is kindergarten age, I would just kind of cover that first. They're going through a time when they're developing autonomy, and they want to have a voice. They want to be independent and show that they can do things by themselves. And if negative interference comes during that time, instead of getting these good attributes, they get shame, embarrassment, self-doubt. They get the feeling that somebody else will do things for me. I'm not capable.
The kind of over-reliance on others, maybe.
And then as you advance into the next ages, 12 years old is going to start having that time when they develop more independence, mastering skills. Ideally, you would want to, as a child, to feel like you're a part of a family, of a community, of a social group. So that would be a different set of circumstances that social media might interfere with. Not only interfering negatively with their self-image, but also for all the time that they're spending on screen time, smartphones and, social media, they're losing time to play. So for my considerations as young learners, their possibility of having speech delay, of motor skills delay, not having this social skills to interact within a game or take turns, to understand the way the world works around them. And then as we go into the teenage years, that's a completely different time as well. And this is where they're developing their identity. And Erik Erikson actually coined the phrase identity crisis because he saw it's so important. If you can't connect with a community and a family and the values that go with that and have pride and an appreciation for where you are and this place of your community, then you're left like the foundation falls out from underneath you. You can't successfully advance on.
And you develop an identity crisis because of that.
Absolutely.
Okay. You mentioned, kids, I think you were talking about kids at the age of 12. They're trying to figure out how the world works.
Up to,
I think 16 with it.
Well, because the first developmental stages are coming very fast. First 18 months of life, first 3 years.
18 months of life?
Yes, that is a developmental stage in and of itself. And then as the child is getting 12 to 18 years old, and then advancing, one stage will be 20 years instead of 20 months. So the length of time that they go through that developmental stage at the early years is very fast paced.
Okay. Like, is it fair to say that how the world works now has changed? So it is geared, I think, more towards technology, more towards screens, more towards, for example, artificial intelligence. But would it be fair to say that مثلا part of what they're learning, if they're learning it online, it's kind of fair enough because the world does work this way now?
It's a balance, I think parents need to be involved in that process. And I'm thankful to see that a lot of parents, children will come to me and say, my mom said I can't watch YouTube unless she's sitting with me or something of that nature. And I was like, good for your mom.
She's monitoring you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just being aware, if with anything, like if we completely forbid something, that's what they wanted even more. But teaching kids skills on how to use it, it's a tool. There's a lot of monitoring systems for
online usage.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can regulate the amount of time that your child is on the phone, and then it just cuts out, and you can see everything that they see. There's a lot of ways that we can protect our children.
Okay. You mentioned the anatomy and independence of a child as they grow up. Last time when we were having a discussion, we were talking about how parents should allow their children to reach or to have curiosity, to come to their own conclusions. And we discussed, like, for us, for example, as Muslims, we would want them to come to the conclusion that the Islam is haqq, that Allah is the truth. But then you mentioned that we as parents have to give them leeway for them to come to that conclusion by themselves. Can you talk a bit about that? Because I think a lot of parents would be afraid to let their kids get too curious. There are many topics we're told, why are you even thinking of that? This is how it is. Don't even consider that. You talked a lot. You've repeatedly mentioned children have independence. They're trying to get that independence and how important it is for us to allow them, both mentally, but also, for example, doing their own things like tying their shoelaces. Why is it important to give them that independence, to allow them to be curious?
I think in our previous conversation, we were talking about quite a bit older children.
We were discussing, I think, teenage years and university years.
Yeah, and that has a unique situation in that if we don't talk to the children about it, the environment's going to talk to them about it. So we have to have the line of communication open.
But kids ask such questions too. I've had a kid come to me once and ask me a question, and I was like, I'll get back to you on that. Because he was like, so we were born Muslim. I was like, yes. And then he's like, and they were born Christian. I was like, yes. Then he's like, so they think Christianity is the truth because that's what they were born as, and we think Islam is the truth because that's what we were born as. So how do we know Islam is the truth? And I looked at him and I was like, I
But
can answer that, but I need, just give me some time so I can come up with a
Yeah.
proper answer and get back to you. But it showed me that he was already thinking about such topic. I think he was like 11 at the time.
But also, that's not actually accurate. It's just that all of us were born Muslim, and then our parents made.
That's what I
us-
came back to him with. And
Yeah.
no, we were all born on Islam. But then some parents, for example, they are Christian, so they made their child a Christian. Some parents, for example, are Buddhist and they made their kids a Buddhist. But our fitra always comes back to the fact that we were born Muslim. So, but the thing is, I didn't answer him immediately. I just didn't want to get anything wrong because it was such a deep question. And I was like, I am not answering you right now. Just give me some time. But my point is that he already showed signs of curiosity and independent thinking from that age.
And
So how do we navigate that?
Asa might have been a really good example that you made for him by saying, I want to be sure how to answer you. You brought up a good question. Let's go find the answer.
Okay.
You know?
I panicked from the inside. I'm like, I don't know how to tell you this is the truth without sounding like, no, this is it and this is what you have to follow. I didn't want it to come across like that, because if he's already having such questions, he's going to be like, okay, she couldn't give me a convincing answer. So how is it the truth if you can't convince me of it? But I was afraid he'll go into that mindset.
Yeah.
But how do we allow kids to have curiosity? Because for me, if I had asked, I asked a similar question recently in Eid to my parents, and the discussion was like, why are you even thinking of that? It was like, I don't know if this makes sense to bring it up now. But
Sure.
okay, my question was Islamic dates, the Hijri date. You can't plan around that date. So for example, if I wanted to book a flight on April 13th, I know, for example, that would be a Tuesday, 6 months later, مثلا. I mean, I can easily book a flight with that date. But then if I was to do it for the Hijri date, it could be like, okay, fine, I don't know, Shawwal 6th is مثلا in Abu Dhabi or in the UAE, let's say it's a Tuesday, but then in Oman it's a Wednesday. How do you, for example, set a meeting with such a date in a global society? How do you travel with such a date? And I'm like, I'm sure there is wisdom and hikmah to why the dates are set like this. But I was just asking what was the logic behind using such a dating system, يعني. Is dating system a right word? Using such a system to calculate the days was. And the whole table was like, what you can't ask that. God has wisdom. I'm like, I know. I'm asking you, what is the wisdom? Like, I don't understand it. But I was like, I wasn't allowed to ask my question. I wasn't trying to question anything. But I thought it was a fair question.
It's kind of a good example of
Being shut down.
Yeah. And it's hard for parents to do that, I think we're all probably have been in that situation on both sides of the spectrum, like as your parents, and then also in your place as well.
As the kid who's asking the question. How do you answer them without freaking out and know, oh my God, they're having thoughts. How do I convince them? How do you not have these feelings as a parent?
So one of the things that I was thinking about as we've been going on talking about being part of being mindful is just to accept ourselves and our own place in the journey with love and, acceptance. And I was thinking all of these questions, I don't want to be an authority on the answer and present it as it's the only way. Because that's part of us all. We should be working as a community to try and solve these problems and help our children and the next generation grow up and show ourselves and others as they go through these issues, kindness, compassion, support. So to that end, when you ask how do we deal with questions like that, it would be really nice if we had community support. Okay. And I know that the scenario you just proposed is completely opposite of that family support. but a lot of people, a lot of parents, and I speak this as a parent, as an educator, we feel so much stress and a desire to do the right thing. And questions like this, being there for our children, I'm sure is very stressful.
I agree, Liyana. I'm not okay. Although I did mention the story with my parents, I do understand why they responded in that way. I think they were thinking that she's questioning the religion. And it's a similar feeling I had when the kid in my family asked me that question. The whole, but how do we know it's the truth? I actually panicked from the inside. So I understand where they came from. But I also relate to the fact that many parents are afraid to answer such questions.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel I completely agree with you. I feel like a discussion like this, no one's trying to be an authority, but we should open such discussions, and
absolutely,
it does exactly what I think you're trying to do, which is bring the conversation to the community, raise awareness. I think you have a very nice way of showing that you're not judging, you're very understanding. I do think having someone like you speak on the topic shows I don't know, you have a vibe which is like, I'm not judging you. I just want us all to be better as a community, I do think that comes across. So inshallah, I hope that nobody who's watching this, anyway, I hope nobody who's watching this feels that any of us are trying to come across as authorities on such a topic. But it is a great topic to discuss, a great topic to bring to the community.
For just 1 hour even, they watch the show and they say, I'm not alone.
Exactly.
Yeah, I went through that experience as well. And just to have that support for a little while it's kind of like it's a healing feeling. And it gives you maybe a little bit more determination to go on, maybe a little bit more insight when you get the next question like that. One of the books that we had talked about, we have a big stack of books we've talked about. The author wanted to name his book like Full Catastrophe, very dramatic title. And he said, I've been spoken to so many times by my publisher, my editor, change the title. He said, I can't, because I want everyone to realize that everybody's life feels like a catastrophe. Okay. Nobody has the perfect life. We're all struggling. We all have these things where you think, the neighbor or, the extended family member, they seem to have it all. And I feel like I'm always falling short and I'm never good enough. We're very judgmental on ourselves. And the reality is nobody's got it right. Nobody's being tested exactly the same way. But we've all got our challenges. And so if that one thing binds us all together so that we can maybe support children better, to support each other better, to be a little more sympathetic with everyone, that would be a truly mindful a mindful accomplishment for all of us.
I think it's interesting that you brought up that he wanted everyone to know that everybody has some sort of chaos. I was watching this, it's a YouTube page where this lady, she doesn't attack, but she discusses social media influencers who kind of fake things on social media. So she was speaking as a mother. And the reason she says that the reason she creates these videos is to show other mothers that, okay, they're showing you that they're getting up at 5:30 a.m. every single day. They're showing you that they have this they're these perfect mothers and everything always goes right all the time. So she kind of debunks their videos to show other mothers that this is not reality. You should not feel guilty. And she said she came from a place where, as a new mother, she was like, they're doing all this and I can't even get out of the house يعني, in a proper manner as a mother. يعني, there's so much stress when you have kids and you're a working mom and stuff like that they don't show in such pages. So she was talking about how important it is for influencers to show the truth, because many mothers do look at that and be like, okay, all these other mothers are perfect and they're getting everything right and I just can't do anything. Yani. So I do agree with the point. I mean, okay, we shouldn't look down on someone who is put together and all, but we should present an honest, and we shouldn't fake what being a mother looks like. We shouldn't fake what being a woman looks like. We shouldn't fake what being whatever it is looks like in society. Yani.
Yeah.
I do think it creates it creates some harm because people look at that, and I think it's human nature to compare.
Yeah.
And I think social media has brought that not only upon kids, but even mothers who look at such pages and they feel affected. They feel guilty that, okay, I can't give to my kids what other mothers seem to be able to give to their kids. And the other mothers are just not presenting a true image of what it is to be a mother. I don't think every single day is 100%. Fab.
And also that facade that needs to be shown. Like if you're doing your job and you're taking care of your children, but you feel the need for validation from complete strangers, then there's also something lacking within you. Because why is the validation from your child not enough?
Why do you need it from strangers? That makes sense. I didn't think of it from that aspect, but that's true. That does make sense.
Again, one of the books that you and I have been referencing quite a lot, it's called The Myth of Normal.
Okay.
And the author of that book brings up exactly this topic. When we're showing our trauma, again, it's not necessarily what other people have done to us sometimes. Sometimes we're doing it to ourselves. Okay. We are putting pressure on ourselves that doesn't need to be there. We're listening to the voices of materialism and superficial attitudes that make us think that we need all these things that we don't really need, or that we have to be all of these things that we were never meant to be.
Like perfect,
yeah. And mothers are having to take on so many other roles than just motherhood, many different stresses that we put on ourselves. That could be the trauma. And then we refer back to our childhood of, maybe feelings of inadequacy or where those feelings originated from. And then we maybe even blame others for it.
Okay. Do you get mothers, as a teacher, do you get mothers who come to you expressing maybe guilt over not being able to be a mindful parent or over anything?
I would love to just be like, I try and welcome all my parents that come. I'm like, if you want to come here and just release stress, scream, yell at me, it's fine. I would just love to hug all my parents when they come to the door. I know they would be a little freaked out. But for the time that I have children within my class, I want to be there for the whole family.
Okay.
And if they feel like sharing, then I'm happy to be there for them. If they don't feel like sharing, sometimes, like we were talking about, those feelings come out in different ways. And I'm just like, that's fine. It's better get all your feelings out, whatever way possible. I want to be there for you. And everybody chooses to do that at a different time in a different way. But I would hope that all good teachers would have that attitude, because we're not just raising one child for 1 year. We, hand them their little certificate and send them on their way. That's not what being a teacher should be about. You should be there for the whole family, because the entire purpose of being an educator is preparing the future, making the world a better place. And the whole family unit needs to be the best that it can be in order to make that happen.
Okay. So you work with them, you try to work with them as a whole.
If
not just the
anyone
child.
wanted that, I would definitely do it. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyone, everyone.
Everyone's welcome.
Yes.
You mentioned being able to let out your emotions and having a space for that. You teach children. I mean, sometimes children don't express their emotions in the best way, and I think parents might want to pull their hair out. How do you teach them that it's okay to show your emotions, but you need to do it in an appropriate manner? Because many kids might not have the ability to do that yet. And it can be like a screaming child in the middle of a mall. How do you teach them in such circumstances?
It's like sometimes I feel like a child's translator. Sometimes the children and the parents are speaking two different languages. You know, like, and I can understand as a parent to see your kid in the middle of the floor having a meltdown, and you just want to die. You just like, I don't know that kid, and walk the other way. What does that tantrum really mean? You know, what does that meltdown really mean? So it's two ways. One, let's help the child to talk about their feelings and give them like appropriate ways to do that. That usually is done. I will do things like social stories or using puppets or toys, modeling to the child. Because especially with puppets, it's nice because we're not pointing a finger at any one person in the class. We can take feelings that we all have.
Like anger, for example.
Yeah. And we can put it in a puppet and we can watch how that works. And just see, okay, is that a good reaction? Is that a bad reaction? What am I going to get if I act like this too? And so they can have a testing ground for emotions.
Using puppets. That's
using different techniques to help the children, you know, in a safe way, experiment with the feeling without actually having to do it.
Okay, can I tell you what I believe I understood from you and you confirm it?
Sure.
And for example, a kid has an anger issue. You'll have two puppets and you'll be like, I'm very angry today. And he'd be having a tantrum and the other puppet will go like, no, that's not the right way. Like, is this what you mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. And that works.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
And that can go for so many things. You can, sometimes if a child is already angry, you can have a puppet talk it out with the child because they don't want to see an adult. And you're kind of showing your perfect adult face and having this authority attitude towards them about everything that they should do. They don't want to do that. I mean, if we're honest, we don't feel like doing that when we're angry either.
That's true.
But, you know, if there's a teddy bear that's like kind of trying to get you to calm down, maybe that's manageable.
The reason I'm laughing is because I'm imagining a child throwing themselves in the middle of a mall, having a tantrum, and then the mom just whips out a puppet and she's like, calm down, child. And I'm just imagining how it looks to everyone. I know you shouldn't care about what it looks to the public, but I do think it would be a funny scene. Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, we need to make sure that we never get to that point.
Okay, so
I know it's going to happen.
We have a puppet in our pocket and we just...
I know that what you want to do is practice at home for situations. And you might see that there's a trend going with your kid lately that it's their habit to have a tantrum when they don't get their way. Or maybe, as we were giving the scenario of in the mall, what time are you in the mall? Are you there at 10 o'clock at night when your child should have been in bed 2 hours ago?
Or in their nap time.
Yeah. Are they hungry? What is the scenario? Are they overstimulated? Is the mall loud and crowded?
But then what if you're somewhere where you have to be there and you have to take your child with you? Like, I mean, for example, I would understand that, okay, it's their nap time. But then you have to be out at that time and you can't leave your kid anywhere, so you have to take him with you.
Yeah.
Then you just have the puppet in your pocket.
For my son, when he was really little, we went to the grocery store. So everybody's been fed. Everybody's had their food. We go over the ground rules before we go into the grocery store. We will not be getting candy or gum. Mm-hmm. Please do not ask for candy or gum. That's not what we're getting today. And we go over the grocery list. We will be getting this. And then I try and engage them. Could you help me to pick out 5 bananas, or, help them be participating in the grocery shopping? Then we get to the checkout. And he was very small. He goes and he tries to take the gum. And I said, no, we're not taking gum. Remember the rules. The person at the checkout intervenes and is like, haram, let him have it. I'm like, well, actually, shouldn't I be teaching him that shoplifting is haram? Like, saying no to the candy isn't actually wrong.
It's actually better for the child not to have the candy. Exactly.
That making it understood that every time you step into a store, you must be gratified with sugar. So
every child who has ever lived.
But this person is not going to have to deal with the consequences of the big meltdown that my child had, because I had to wrestle the gum out of his hand and return it. He's like shoving it in his mouth as fast as he can.
Oh, God.
And I'm trying to pull it away. And it was embarrassing. And I always think, like, that's just one example. But when we go into grocery stores or something and I see parents struggling in that same way, especially when they're putting ground rules down, I'm like, you go, girl.
Do your thing.
Just fight.
Set your boundaries.
I know how hard it is. And look at this man giving my kid candy. It's not his place to do that. And he sees that he's going directly against the mother.
Parents' wishes.
I'm like, you can carry the kid for 9 months. You want to have a say in the way that this child is going to grow, then you need to have some responsibility.
You do the pushing.
So, and I know this is, I giving this scenario, this is something that happens all the time for mothers. Parents, extended family, strangers, they all intervene and they want to go against your rules and they want to have a say in what you're doing and tell you how you're doing it wrong. And that's an additional struggle that I think parents have here. And then also the child is going to get mixed messages.
Okay. There's so much more for us to discuss, so I can guarantee that there will be another episode, inshallah. I think we should make this a regular thing, where we tackle different topics related to parenting, mindfulness. We have not gotten to the children's nutrition bit, but this was a good starting point. You mentioned candy, but it was a good starting point, but we're out of time.
Okay.
But I'd love to have you on regularly for such discussions. I think what you discussed is very beneficial. I think it is raising awareness. And I do think, despite I felt your fear a bit of sounding authoritative on such a topic, I do think you have a lovely way of bringing such a topic.
Good. I hope so.
Yeah, inshallah. And inshallah, it reaches in the correct way. So inshallah, we will be having this discussion in the future very soon.
Okay.
Thank you so much for coming down.
Oh, it's really always nice to talk to you. It's really it's relaxing and easy to talk to you.
Alhamdulillah, because I feel the same way with you. The viewers don't know this, but we ended up having, was it a whole hour of a discussion after the cameras were off?
I thought it was like Salat al-Maghrib and it was all dark. I was so surprised to see that it was still daytime.
Exactly, Fa. We will have you back, inshallah. Thank you so much for taking the time to come down.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.